if performed, I think the scorecard would be very much on the positive side. Of course, there are still a lot of milestones to achieve, and there's still a lot of work to be done. But I think going by the number of RTI applications filed, and of course the second appeal complaints that come to the Central Information Commission and the various state information commissions in India, that would be a testimony to how the act is being used by everyone in India, citizens, the common man, for his or her benefit, really. And I think in that way, this act has rightly been described as a sunshine legislation, which has empowered the people. It is, of course, on one hand, a tool to ensure transparency and accountability, but on the other hand, also to combat the perils, the evil of corruption and nepotism. How far we've succeeded, of course, is a work in progress. So I really don't think it would be fair on my part to really quantify on how much and how far we've gone. But I think it would be important to give you an idea of the scale of the implementation of this act. And I have some figures I thought I would share with you. For instance, in 1920-21, our financial year runs from the 1st of April to 31st of March. So in 1920, we had, received the whole RTI mechanism, over 13.7 million RTI applications, and 10.8 million were actually disposed of. As far as the second appeal or complaint that the Central Information Commission is concerned, you're probably aware that there is a first appeal stage within the public authority itself, and then you come on second appeal or complaint to the commission, whether the state or the Central Information Commission. In 2021, the Central Information Commission received 19,183 second appeals or complaints, and we actually disposed of 17,016. This was actually less than the year before. Not the disposal rate. The disposal rate was actually more, despite the pandemic, the first wave of the pandemic. But the number of applications or number of second appeals were perhaps slightly less than the year before. But I think the pandemic has actually brought out how important it is that information is readily available to the common man, to the citizens. And I think the theme for today, information as a public good, for the World Freedom Day, Press Freedom Day, is also very appropriate. Because while we are in this pandemic, the tendency is, and sometimes it's unavoidable, that work comes to a halt. And work comes to a halt simply because the infrastructure or the people involved, after all, there are humans involved in any of these exercises, are unable to cope. And just today, in fact, despite a cremation that I had to attend virtually, I managed to dispose of 16 cases in the morning. And in some cases, I found that the appellant or the respondent had tested positive or was in hospital. And in fact, last week I did a case with someone who was so keen that she was in hospital. She was not very, she was stable, and she insisted on going through the audio hearing. We are doing audio hearing. I'll come to the innovations that we've done to try and take into account the impediments and the hurdles posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. But I wanted to emphasize the point that how the people see the RTI as a mechanism to gain information, to gain insights, which would help them in the fulfillment of their objectives. In fact, in many cases, people see it as a grievance redressal mechanism, which it isn't. But it turns out that in many cases, it actually it serves as a unintended grievance redressal mechanism. The act itself didn't envisage that. I had a lot of examples to give you on how the RTI has functioned in the last 15 years or so, but I think I will leave it because one, there's a paucity of time, and two, I think we need to look at what we can do in the future. And I would recommend that if you have the time, if you go to the website website of the Central Information Commission, there is a document called Trust Through Transparency. And that Trust Through Transparency begins with the preamble of the RTI Act, which again I will not read, and I plan to read it, but it has concrete instances of how the RTI has helped the common man. And this book is really worth, and I have it with me, it's an online too. It's really worth going through, because then once you go through it, you realize how the RTI has benefited the common people in India and the citizens of India. Of course, from personal experience, because till November last year, just to again put things in context, we have 8 commissioners in the Central Information Commission, and the Chief Information Commissioner distributes work in terms of, it's like allotting portfolios or public authorities, so to speak. So in my previous assignment as Information Commissioner, I was assigned the whole of the Delhi government, which is the government of the National Capital Territory of Delhi. And I realized that I was doing so many cases related to small issues, small for you, for us, you and me, but not so small for the person concerned. Things like ration cards from fair price shops, or getting a driving license, or getting your electricity bill, your meter checked if you allege it's tampered, inflated water bill, electricity bill, etc. So just to give you the idea of those very small issues that come up in the day-to-day lives of people and how they are addressed. And in most of these cases, at least when I was doing the Delhi government, I don't do that anymore, was that when the notice from the commission went for a second appeal hearing, in about at least 50% of the cases, or if not more, the issues would be resolved, and the appeals would be either withdrawn before the hearing or during the hearing, because the notice from the commission did the trick, so to speak. So I think these are the advantages that people that have accrued to citizens in India through the RTI Act. The larger issues, of course, of combating corruption, petty level corruption, yes. The larger issues of combating corruption, of course, are issues that are confronted in a different way and are enacted in a different way. We have, for instance, landmark legislation by our superior courts, high courts, and Supreme Courts, which have shaped the work of the commissions and the way the RTI Act is interpreted. And I mean, again, I have a list of these important judgments, but I won't go into detail. But they do, in many ways, circumscribe the work of the commission, and in many ways clarify the work of the commission. I'll just refer to a recent judgment of the Madras High Court, which I haven't even read in detail because of the lockdown, but I have seen a press report regarding that. A request, well, it's asking the commissions, both the central and the state commissions, to consider looking at here to fast tracking hearings related to the COVID-19 epidemic. Now, last year, when we were struck with this epidemic, the commission did take up some cases, some cases which actually made the headlines and some that didn't, related to the COVID pandemic. And this year, we hope to do the same, as long as, and that the High Court judgment, I believe, refers to that, that it does not cause an unnecessary diversion of resources of the public authority. But you must understand that in this time of pandemic, there are people actually on the ground fighting the pandemic, combating the pandemic and helping people. So, for instance, last year I had municipal corporations, subdivisional magistrates, people from the Delhi police actually coming on hearings from the road, literally, while enacting, while doing their duties at the airport, at the hospitals, at the Delhi Jal Board, for instance, the water authority, etc. So I think you need to strike a balance. How we strike that balance is the key on how we're going to address these issues. On the future, I'd like to spend some time on that. I think as far as the future of the RTI Act is concerned, I think I would think that there are two very important issues. One is voluntary public disclosure. Now, that is something that we need to enforce in a way, then the need to file RTI applications correspondingly reduced, or would the numbers would certainly they decrease. Now, there we have a system of a transparency audit, which the Commission itself carries, sort of monitors, doesn't carry out, but it monitors. And Section 4 of the RTI Act enjoins the public authority to conduct the audit every year. And this is now done through, in fact, the Department of Personnel, Government of India has issued instructions on how to go about it to the various public authorities. And we then enjoin each public authority to get a transparency audit conducted. There are parameters, there are marks, and there are gradings. And it's interesting because the results of that actually, over the years, since it's been adopted, has been very, very encouraging. And while we grade people on various parameters that I mentioned, one of the main issues here is to get the public authority to get the audit conducted. It's normally done by a training institute attached to that ministry or department, and where there are public authorities that do not have access or do not have such training institutes, they are permitted to go outside and get it done outside their own ministry or department. To give you an idea, there's six parameters and the weightage: organization and functions 10%, budget and program 30%, publicity and public interface 25%, e-governance 20%, information that may be prescribed 10%, and information that is disclosed on the public authority's own initiative 5%. So this basically is how we score, grade the various public authorities. And we've noticed that over the years, the public authorities have actually been moving up the ladder in terms of the grading that we give them, and the public disclosures that they make. But we still have a very long way to go. And that, I think, is a very major challenge for the future. And of course, the other point that I think is going to impact how the RTI mechanism is implemented in the future is technology. And I think this was brought out to us starkly last year when the pandemic hit us, because we were unable to conduct physical hearings. We were doing a large number of video hearings through a centralized NI, the National Informatics Center, which has studios all over India. So we would invite the respondent or the appellant, or both, to come to those studios and video conference with us. Sometimes we would have the appellant or the respondent in a physical hearing in the commission, and the other party through video conferencing. And that way we were able to address these sort of problems, the constraints of distance, because at the central government, we have public authorities, the CIC, we have public authorities all over India, including all the union territories that come under the commission in terms of their second appeals and complaints. So I think technology has been extremely important. But last year, when we were in a complete lockdown, there was nobody, people weren't allowed to move outside their houses, so they couldn't even go to the nearest NIC studio. And then what actually came as a boon to us, and we all of us adopted it very enthusiastically, was the smartphone. And through the smartphone, we conducted a large number of hearings. Today, I conducted 16 hearings through the audio, we call it the audio conference, because the appellant or the respondent was unable to come for a video conference. And most of us who are not in the commission because of the large number of registries, people having tested positive, including fellow commissioners who have tested positive. So we were all trying to see how best we can work from whatever location we are in, at home or elsewhere. And similarly, we were able to get the appellant or the respondent sitting from their homes or from their offices. And we noticed that we were actually able to get a better response from the respondent because the respondent sitting in the office at the appropriate level, the central public information officer, and not his assistant or his assistant's assistant, would participate. The drawback, of course, is that sometimes the senior officer would not be as familiar with the case as a subordinate. But then there is a trade-off when you do these things. And in fact, last year in June, we disposed, the Central Information Commission disposed of more cases soon after the lockdown, but still very much in a graduated opening up and lockdown scale, more than in June 2019. And the same applied, if I remember correctly, for July 2020 versus July 2019. Now we're faced with this challenge again, and we are hoping that we would be able to continue what we had started there. But that was through a simple thing like a smartphone. You could either do it through an audio, or you could even do a WhatsApp video if the appellant and respondent were connected through that. The challenge is how to improve on that further. Of course, courts have gone into virtual hearings, the Supreme Court and the High Courts, etc. We have a slightly different problem because in many cases, our appellants do not have easy access to these facilities. So while the appellant is represented by a lawyer who has access in his chamber or at his residence to all the paraphernalia of technology, in the RTI, when we talk about the common man in villages and in remote areas, the good thing is they all have smartphones or they have access to smartphones. So we are able to connect to them for the hearings. But the real challenge, of course, is technology. And we will have to rely on how technology can help us. And I hope this is once in a century or a black swan event, as they call it. But one has to be prepared that there may be some similar such events where we are forced to conduct hearings from the confines of our homes or even our offices, and are not able to conduct physical hearings. So I think this is important. Of course, one more point before I end, and I realize that I'm exceeding the time prescribed to me, is the menace of, and I don't like to use the word frivolous RTI because everyone has a right to file RTIs, but certainly repetitive RTIs meant to harass, and I think RTI will harass again. I mean, depends on who is being harassed. Most of the time, it's the appellant who's harassed. So you have to choose your words carefully. But to give you an idea of what I mean, the total number of applicants that I include appellants and complainants whose cases are pending before the commission, the Central Information Commission, and I'm only talking about those applicants who have filed 10 or more RTIs. The total number is quite astounding. It's about 11,145 did RTIs, or second appeals complaints, of people who filed more than 10. And about 400 such people, appellants, have done so. And a person who has filed the maximum is someone who's 1,223 appeals and complaints are pending. Now, you may ask that, so what? I mean, I think that's good. The person's proactive, people are proactive, people are asking. I agree. Yes, you have to be proactive. But then you must also weigh the right, your own freedom, your own right to ask questions, to seek information against others' rights. And there are so many cases, there are judgments, there are commission decisions where repeated RTIs have been filed with apex institutions or public authorities, whether it's the Prime Minister, the President, or the Lieutenant Governor or the Chief Minister, etc. And the actual custodian of information is a subordinate office. So then you inundate that office with RTI applications seeking information on matters which are clearly not within their immediate domain. Now, these are problems that we face, we have to deal with. Now, there are various ways how to deal with it. I found a way to deal with 400 in such applications last year in July, and by disposing them off together. But then everyone has to find a way to do it in such a way also that the purposes, the ends of justice are served. I think I've already spoken more than the allotted time, but thank you once again for inviting me to speak to such a distinguished gathering. And even though it's virtually, I hope the next time will be in Colombo or in Kandy, Anuradhapura, or Trincomalee, even better. Look forward to visiting Sri Lanka at some point of time. Thank you very much.